Good afternoon, all. Great to see everyone online in Chicago, Vancouver. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope everyone's academic year is off to a great start. And it's with great excitement and anticipation that I stand before you today to introduce a new leader who will steer the future of our institution. Over the past few months, we faced significant challenges, and it's time for us to seize this moment and shape our future with vision and purpose, emerging stronger than before, which will be led by our new president, Dr. Lisa Coleman. President Coleman brings a fresh perspective and an inspiring commitment to our university. And her leadership is about more than just navigating change. It's about transforming our challenges into opportunities. And with her extensive experience and innovative approach, we are poised for a future of growth and impact. So today, President Coleman will share her vision for our path forward. And we will have time for questions, which will be led by our lovely Liz Blondell, who's in the back there. And immediately following the town hall, Chicago will have our Welcome Back to Campus event, so please stick around for that. We're about to embark on an exciting new chapter at Adler University, so I hope you all are ready. And it's my honor and my pleasure to introduce the person who will lead us into this new era. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Lisa Coleman.
I actually had no idea what Kyra was gonna say, so that was very kind. Thank you, Kyra, for that introduction. Let's hope I can live up to the things that I'm going to talk about. I'm gonna get started, and can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great. And welcome to everyone and everyone online as well, and across all of Adler. And I just want to say it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I spent the couple months over the summer kind of getting acclimated, and the last 2 weeks has been a whirlwind. So thank you, and thank you for everyone who's been supporting me through this. So before I get started, I do want to do a land acknowledgement, and so I'm just going to do that now. I would like to honor and acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose lands we now occupy in Chicago, Vancouver, and across our global Adler communities. We acknowledge that we are gathered here on this land and that many of our institutions and homes are located on the unceded lands of indigenous peoples. We acknowledge that the United States and Canada, as well as other locations around the world, were founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples, as well as the discounted labor and intellectual innovations of many indigenous and other marginalized people. We continue our efforts to recognize and address ongoing systemic exclusions and the continuation of new forms of settler colonialism. We honor all those who come before us, the sacrifices, the conscious and not, whose lives are known and unknown to us, who paved the way for us, with whom we would not be able to be here. Let us pause for a moment in silence and recognition. Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge all the people who helped put this presentation together. I mean, there were people like on the PowerPoint, everybody, I saw the caterers, somebody helped me to get to the bathroom. Thank you to everyone who has helped make today possible. There are all these people behind the scenes, and I want to thank all the door people, because as people know, I've been wandering around lost, and they have just been great. And I saw the cleaning women last night. Terrific tech team, everybody, so thank you, and especially to the teams in the Office of the Provost and the President. Okay, so I'm going to get started on my presentation, and I'm going to try not to be long-winded, but you know, I was a professor, so we're gonna try to get through all of this. Okay, so first, just a brief outline, and what I'll say is we're going to go through these things relatively quickly, as I've said. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the Adler presidency, the journey, so Adler's journey, a little bit about leadership and change management, because of course, as Kyra mentioned in her opening remarks, we've had a lot of change and challenges and going to have some opportunities. We'll talk about our mission and our future, and then I'll conclude, and of course, we'll have some questions. The first is, who am I? And I think, I've done some videos, I've done some things, and I know that you've heard some of that, but I think I want to concretize a little bit more about who I am. And so, you see, technical difficulties. So that's a picture of my mom and me right there. That was a picture of my mother when she was 89 years old. My mother died this March and was a computer scientist who went back to school when she was in her 40s and went into this subject called computer science. When I saw the movie Hidden Figures, I was like, oh, Mom, have you seen this movie? And so one of the things that I say is that I was raised by an innovator. I was raised by someone who would break boundaries and who would surround me with people who would do that. She was a leader in her field, and she took me when I was very young to see a man by the name of James Baldwin. He was giving a talk, and I went to see him. I was about 7, and I fell in love with this man. And so the picture on the other side is a picture, it's actually a reproduction of a picture of James Baldwin dancing with one of my favorite playwrights, Lorraine Hansberry. Lorraine Hansberry, of course, wrote A Raisin in the Sun. The reason I bring those two together is because not only did they make impact and really do leadership in kinds of unique ways, but they had a whole lot of fun doing it. There are all these images of them together, and that's what I hope for us at Adler, that we will be able to move through the challenges, but do it with joy, do it with passion, and do it together. But let me say this about how I became a leader. So as I said, I'm not a typical leader in many ways. My career has been mostly dedicated to righting the wrongs of society in a number of ways. I haven't always been popular, thank goodness, because leadership isn't about popularity. It is about integrity, though, and I think it is about being courageous. It's about surrounding myself with the best of the best, surrounding myself with people who are better than I am, because I have spots where I'm not good. So building that team. It's about weathering storms, making mistakes, recovery, and resilience. And of course, we as an institution are about recovery. It's about respect and showing respect. And it is also, what I've also often said, is a good leader is someone who makes the mistakes, brushes themselves off, gets back up, takes accountability, right? And sometimes that accountability means that you actually have to lean into things. And then it is about getting out of the myopic to the vision. It's about collecting data and training. I've done a lot of training to be a leader, so it's about how we develop that expertise, building collaborations, getting tools. And I'm a leader who takes leadership seriously. I taught leadership, I still teach leadership. I was a DEI officer and I was educated by feminists, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, Dr. Janetta B. Cole, Dr. Beverly Guy Chantal, Linda Villarosa, Susan Taylor, Gloria Anzaldúa, Sherry Moraga, and so many others. I have been threatened, I have been stalked, I still get death threats, I have weathered storms and much change. I have been the inaugural and first officer on multiple occasions. But I always say, I'm not the first. I actually come from a family of first. They were the first. And I don't like to celebrate my firsts, because I also think my career has been built because of those people who paved the way before me. I know that there's been a lot of turbulence here, a lot of shifts, a lot of change. But I know that together we can do this and we can leave things differently and we can lean into a different kind of leadership. I believe in transparency, I believe in communication. You will have, I sometimes over-communicate. We will have town halls, and our next town hall, I will actually delve into some more specifics about how we will go forward, and I'm going to talk about how I'm laying the framework for that in just a second. No, leaders love quotes. We just love quotes. I don't know why, but it's something where we do this. So I have a series of quotes up here. The first is by Lorraine Hansberry. And sometimes I think I'm not so young anymore, but then, you know, when you have a grandmother and mother who lived into their 90s, you're like, oh, I'm a kid. So though it is to be, it be a thrilling and marvelous thing to be merely young and gifted in such times, it is doubly so, doubly dynamic to be young, gifted, and Black. Number two, James Baldwin, the world is before you and you need not leave it as it was when you came in. My guiding principle. Number three, Yuri, one of our Japanese activists who, of course, led in the civil rights era. Our ultimate objective in learning about anything is to try to create and develop a more just society than we have seen. Tomorrow's world is yours world to build. Lilia Watson, an Indigenous activist. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And finally, the reason I went to graduate school was because of Jim Jordan. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Okay, so now we're going to delve into some of the meat of the present. I love this clicker. Okay. So one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and it actually happened when I went to Vancouver, is who was Alfred Adler, right? We're named after Alfred Adler, and why is that significant? And so one of the things about Alfred Adler is that he actually broke rules. He broke rules, he broke with Freud, he created new paradigms. Well, he was a rule breaker, had some revolutionary ideas for his time. Now, certainly, people are always trapped by their time. I'm trapped by mine. But at the time was a revolutionary and really thinking about how do you build community? How do you think about community and, right, the psychological mind, right? But not just the mind, but the body and how we work in community. And I think to return to Adler is very important. So as I think about our university and our journey, I think it's important that we reimagine who we are as a graduate school. And I've been saying this, we work with nonprofit, and we probably eventually will work with for-profits, but we are not for-profit institution. That's a higher education institution guided by federal and state obligations that are relevant to higher education. But we have broken the mold because of the way in which we've decided to put a stake in the ground at the same time that many institutions are rolling back on certain things. We've decided to keep that stake in the ground, and part of it is you decided to hire me, a diversity officer, right? At the time that so many people are rolling back in those areas. So I thank you as a community, and we will go together and see how this winds up. But that includes reimagining, as piggybacking on this idea of new ideas, Adler University's role in higher education. Not only must we align our operations, and I'm going to talk a little bit about fiscal stability, et cetera, but who we are in higher education. And think about the dynamics of the sector. That at the beginning of 2010, there were 4,400 institutions of higher education. Now there are 4,000. The prediction is that there will be even less, right, as we go forward in the next 5 to 10 years. So who are we as an institution? What is our market distinction? How are we thinking about educating our students? And I believe that we can be a preeminent graduate institution advancing health, equity, mental health, and as they intersect with health justice. Did I get time back? Okay.
I'll run it for you in the back.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So you're like, who are these animals? Okay, you're like, why does she have animals up there? So this is the little thing that I talk a lot about. Institutions have different cultures and different personalities. I've worked in the past for a giraffe, a bear, and a panther. Tufts, Harvard, and NYU. You'll have to guess. A giraffe is an aspirational institution. It's reaching in the air for the leaves. It's trying to get those leaves. That's an aspirational institution. A bear is very hard to move. I'm sure you can guess who the bear is. And a bear is very hard to move. And you have to work with a bear very differently than you would work with a giraffe. A panther is sleek and black in the night and might steal your neighborhood. 13 campuses, 25 research centers at NYU all over the world. Who is Adler? Well, I'm playing with this. We'll see. But what I have for right now is I'm thinking that we just might be a bumblebee. Why might we be a bumblebee? Bumblebees carry things outside of their size. They produce and they pollinate all over the world. They work in community and serve greater causes. They create hives to thrive. They have strength and endurance. They defy physics and aerodynamics because they don't flap up and down, they flap horizontally, like Adler. Different. They might sting you, but it's only because they have to. They're essential to flowers and they have 5 eyes. We might just be that bumblebee, flying, pollinating across the world, thinking about how we do things differently and working together. If you don't like the bumblebee, don't worry, there'll be more. But I think one of the things that bumblebees do is challenge science, right? Sort of traditional models of science, and they do that by defying physics. And one of the things that I think that we do at Adler is redefine, particularly the area of psychology and the scientific methodologies there. And so that is partially why I chose the bumblebee. I return to leadership, next slide. I return to leadership now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership role and clarifications. Next slide. And so one of the things that I think is, what is the role of the university? So I've already talked a little bit about universities and what's happening, and you'll hear me talk more and more about the roles of universities in terms of education and the promise of higher education. But I also think that we have to talk about the various roles within an institution. And particularly today, I'm going to talk about being a president. And so the role of the president has changed. It's changed over the last 20 years. It's changed, it just has. Some of that has to do with the fiscal challenges that we've seen. Some of those have to do with different student populations. Some of that has to do with different faculties and new programs and emerging programs, et cetera. And a lot of it has to do with increased federal regulations and state regulations. Sorry, I know the compliance officers are like, thank you, but it's really true. And so that has led the president to have to do things much more externally than historically presidents have had to do. And so you will see that I will be spending a lot of time working with external partners, et cetera. I have been on campus and will be here, of course, and we'll be doing town halls, et cetera. But I do like to set expectations because some of this is, in fact, we just have a new law here in Chicago that's going to adversely impact us, and it has to do with employees. And I need to be thinking about who's going to lobby for us, right? How are we going to lobby as an institution, and how are we going to join the other institutions in the Chicago area so that we are not adversely impacted by some of these new regulations? So those are the kinds of things, right? So it's to advocate for the university, to raise funds for the university, to really think about reshaping the university and brand and market, and then getting that and making an impact both internally, but also externally. That will mean that Janine, we will miss you. It will be true. We will have a new provost. And so we'll be thinking about how we scope that. And of course, as many of you know, we're having a new dean in Chicago. We will continue to have individuals involved in all of that. And when I think about this idea of leadership, right, we will think about how we take calculated risk and accountability. But I also want to say that there is a power analysis here. And there are a lot of things that came out of that power analysis. Some of it, I think, is relevant. And I think some of that is about some of the things that we need to do about policies and making sure that people have access and understand what the right routes are for them to take for a variety of things. Some of the power analysis was about our former leadership, and that's great. But there's a new leadership. And actually, and when I look at my leadership cabinet, I've had to change a lot of that leadership cabinet, and there will be not only new additions and massaging, et cetera. I've hired an organizational development consultant, his company, and he was the president of the National Organizational Development Organization for the United States of America. He's qualified, and he's going to come in, and he's meeting with a variety of people and stakeholders, including some open sessions, and you'll get some information about that, to help me as we think about rebuilding the team that I talked about, right? A team of excellence. Next slide. One of the things that I focus a lot on is organizational excellence as well. So people will talk about academic excellence, and they will also talk about professional excellence, and I think sometimes we don't spend enough time thinking about the organization and how we deliver excellence through various methods. So we will be focusing on, as you can see, transparency. Transparency is a two-way street because it's linked to accountability. So how do we make sure that we have both of those? We will have a brand communication strategy, and some of you, of course, will be working with me on that. And as you can see at the bottom, fiscal stability, growth, and continuity. So what I'll say about fiscal stability right now is institutions, as I've said, have changed. And so the ways in which fiscal stability has to be managed is much bigger than it was historically. And so that is something where not just hiring a CFO, it's about hiring an Office of Advancement and having a plan. And that's also to increase faculty resources, which are very important. And there are a number of ways that I think that we will be able to do that over time. And of course, resources for our students and our staff. And as we know, we have some critiques of our cost, et cetera. So really leaning into that and thinking about how can we buttress that with some new fiscal opportunities. Next slide. Why are we here? We're here for higher education to educate future leaders, to address ongoing health disparities and mental health and beyond. That is why we're here. We got some students. I have to say, our students, I've met with our students over the summer, both in Chicago and Vancouver. I've met with students here. I've been walking around just introducing myself. I know they're like, who is this woman who's just accosting us all the time? But I wanted to make sure I'm reaching out to students and introducing myself, and I will continue to do that. And I really think that our students, it's important that we serve our students well. And I will also be working with our alumni community to really think about how we re-engage them as well, and working with the faculty because, of course, many of you have worked with them. Next slide. You will hear me talk a lot about this, and this is for me why we're here. We're here for our people, our purpose, our partnership, and for the promise of Adler. So I'm going to go through each one of these, the people, the purpose, the partnership, and what I mean by the promise. And some of that promise is about breaking right with traditions. It's about putting a stake in the ground. And that is part of the promise of Adler. Next slide. So with our people, we'll think about stabilization, infrastructure, and support, and building trust. Some of that, as I've said, I'm bringing in an organizational consultant to help us and help me really think about how we stabilize. What does not just the leadership team look like, but what are areas of gap areas that we have so that we can be agile and responsive to emerging needs. To look at our infrastructure, and I know there, even in the power analysis, there were some comments about the infrastructure and how we actually support people across the institution and build better supports. And lastly, of course, building trust. Trust is hard, right? Trust is hard. We don't trust each other often. I'm in therapy, my own therapy, I'm a therapist, and I'm working on my own trust issues. And I think that what we, no, that is true. And so what I think is that trust is a two-way street, right? And so we're going to have to rebuild a lot of trust across our communities, trust with our students, trust with our staff, trust with our faculty. And I encourage you to help me do that, right? I am going to be as available as possible and really try to lean into how do we care for each other? How do we demonstrate leadership? How do we think about being leaders with compassion and respect and integrity and valuing one another? And those are the kinds of ideals that I will lean into. And then, of course, see how we can work together. The how of it is building our future together. So investments in us, investments in the institution, and that will be multimodal. Everything from thinking about, I know we're not a research one institution, a research two, right? But we have some opportunities, I think, to build with some partners, both governmental partners, other universities, both in Vancouver, with our Indigenous populations. We can create cultures of care and wellness because that's what we do externally. I think we can bring that back inside and think about how do we care for each other. And of course, let's focus on health, equity, and community. The current landscape, I have to say, is very difficult, and it's very difficult for lots of institutions, not just Adler. And that's why I gave you those statistics about institutions closing. But what I will say is we will take calculated risks and we'll learn from our mistakes if we make some, and then we will move on quickly. I am I was also trained in design thinking. It's you create something, you test it, you pilot it, you figure out your mistakes, you correct, you redo it again. And it's a cycle. And that is about fast recovery and resilience. And so you will see there will be a number of things that we try, a number of initiatives. I've done this at a number of other institutions. Some of them will stick, some of them won't, and then we will move. Purpose, priorities. The first is institutional legibility and engagement. So I think one of the things is sometimes I spend a lot of time on Google. Remember, my mom was a computer scientist, so I grew up with all these things, including the big ones. Remember those? And so, so one of the things I do is I just Google Adler, like 3 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep, right? And I Google different people. Well, I get different messages when I Google Adler. That's not good. Right, that's not good. We need a streamlined message, is what I'm saying, right? So that's where we're gonna head. And I'm gonna engage the community. We're gonna have some brand engagement, get some feedback. I started doing some of this even over the summers. I was meeting with people, using different terms, et cetera. But we're gonna kind of make ourselves more legible. Why is that important? Legibility is important for the things that I've been talking about, partnerships, right? Working with National Science Foundation, working with these entities. And if they can't read you, right, then they can't understand it. So that's what we're going to try to do. And we'll do it together. Market differentiation. I can't say enough about health equity, mental health. Again, I read the newspaper. And so there's just so much out there and so much possibility for us to lean into. And that, of course, will include realigning some of our strategic goals, both at the institutional level, but then, of course, across different areas. Next slide. How will we do this? We'll think about our educational pedagogies. I want to thank our faculty who've been doing terrific work, and I know it's been difficult for many of our faculty over these last couple of years, but really thinking about how do we support our student leaders in mental health, health equity, and really thinking about that and health justice. We're going to build on the Adlerian models of an integration of community and really lean into that. You'll hear me talking a lot about Adler as I go forward, both inside and outside. This weird little thing, I studied Adler actually when I was like 20. And it was just a thing that happened because I was actually studying Freud. And so Adler came up. And so I was familiar with Adler even before coming to this institution. I am not saying I'm an Adlerian scholar. That would be an insult to the faculty and people who actually are. What I am saying is that I'm familiar with the work of Adler and will be leaning into that and working with our faculty and others who are Adlerian scholars. And then, of course, thinking about the value of the education for our students. I've met with some of the students, but I've also met with just a few of the alums. And so we will talk more about how we can re-engage alums and reimagine that space as well. Next slide. Partnership, collaboration, and specialization. So one of the things is there's lots of ways to partner, lots and lots of ways to partner. And what we need to do, as I've sort of said, is sort of align it with the ways in which we will rebrand, reimagine, and of course, think about that legibility. I'll just give you one example. So we have Adler in Vancouver. Well, one of the opportunities is to work with Indigenous populations, right? That's specialization and collaboration. That's not all communities, it's a particular group, and then thinking about how we advance that work. So that's what I mean about specialization. And that doesn't mean we might not grow that work over time, right? But how do we actually make sure that we can support that work and move it forward? Expansion and relevance. So there are some ways that we will expand, and that will be relevant to some programs, to some of the demands, to some of the areas where our students, et cetera. And then, of course, the areas that we have to support. I am not a person who just expands willy-nilly, right? Just growth for growth's sake. Because you have to have strategic growth and then think about the supports that you have for that growth. And that is partially what I'm talking about, fiscal stability and stabilization. And then, of course, resource enhancement, which that's part of what I was talking about, the presidential role externally. And I've already been to 2 foundation meetings. So, getting out there, making contacts, as it were. Somebody wants to throw me a party even. So I'm like, hey, let's bring some faculty. Okay, so we are going to then increase our partnerships for mental health and really think about how we're doing that in the community and support the programs that are already very strong. Next slide. How we will do this, we will work together. Partnership augmentation will have innovation and explore new ideas. I just mentioned design thinking and reimagine. There are three types of growth and innovation. One is fundamental, incremental, and radical. We will spend most of our time in fundamental and incremental. That's just where we are, okay? Because we need to support some of the programs, et cetera. There will be some radical things, because I'm radical, that I will do, but with support, right? And so, but that's, if you were thinking 2/3 or 5/5 or 5/6 or whatever, that, the first two are where we will be focused, okay? And that will help us reimagine our future together. Next slide. So as I conclude, I did pretty well for time. I thought I was gonna go really long. I want to just talk about 3 takeaways so that we have, thinking about a new era of leadership, collaboration, communication, and transparency, people, purpose, and partnership, and the promise of Adler. And that promise is to our students and to supporting our alums so that they feel like they can be leaders in their, once they leave Adler, and making the world different because we are the ones we've been waiting for. I want to thank the team again. I want to take one moment to thank someone, and that's Janine. As you know, she's leaving. And I want to thank you for working with our faculty and during these tumultuous times, as I've read, and you putting together this BAA office, which was not structured, and really thinking about it. And thank you for your collegial work with SLT. Just so you know, being a president ain't for the faint of heart. You know, you know, reading the paper, you all. So good luck. And seriously, though, we wish you nothing but the best and enjoy Maine. You know, I love Maine, so enjoy Maine. Thank you again, Janine. Can we give her a round of applause? I want to thank you all for being here. And as I said earlier, at the top of this, there will be another town hall, and then I will go through particular areas of a strategic, the beginning of a strategic planning process. I will talk through how we're going to engage individuals. People have been asking some questions, and so I'm just going to answer these right off the top of the bat. Will I restructure the senior leadership team? Yes, every president does that. I would be a fool not to, so I'm going to do that. And so I will do that, but I will get engaged, you know, have engagement. That's part of the reason I hired a consultant who's meeting with a number of people. So reimagines the senior leadership team, the cabinet, those kinds of things. And I'm going to do it quickly so that I am actually engaging with people. And I will continue to meet with individuals from the groups across the institution. And I've been doing that thus far, and I'm getting my calendar. The other piece that I will say, I mentioned the power analysis, and see, I closed my notes so quickly. There was one other. Oh, and I will be doing some key strategic hiring. So I know that some of you have been asking about vacancies, et cetera, and can we begin to refill? And I'm going to be looking at that and helping people to figure out what we can do next and be strategic. And then, of course, as I said, try to build the right and accurate enrollment strategy and marketing and fiscal strategies. And I think that we can build a team to do that. So thank you very much. And I'm taking questions now. Is that right? For Liz.
So, hi, everyone. Does this work? Okay, great. Hello, everyone, and I hope you can hear me online. So please, in the chat, let me know if you can hear me. I'm in a different mic. Izzy, our facilities coordinator in Chicago, will be fielding questions in Chicago. I'll be moderating online, and for those in Vancouver. So yeah, we have one question already online that I will ask from Vancouver staff or faculty. I'm looking at a lot of things right now. Someone in Vancouver. I heard President Coleman talk about U.S. legislation and Illinois laws, along with various other references to Americanism, but there was little acknowledgement of the Canadian academic landscape or regulations affecting our programs here. Her statement, "We have Adler in Vancouver," could feel quite alienating and underscores the ongoing neglect we face in Canada. How will President Coleman work to enhance visibility in Canada as a crucial first step towards building trust?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm sorry you felt that way, that I did not acknowledge Vancouver. Part of the work that I talked about with the Indigenous communities, et cetera, is all about Vancouver, actually. And Vancouver was the first a place that I visited upon coming to Adler. I actually didn't come to Chicago first, I went to Vancouver first. But thank you for the question. And so I'm flying to Vancouver on Monday and we'll be meeting with a number of people. I will also be going to Vancouver on a regular basis, I met with students, I've met with faculty and staff when I was there the last time. I wasn't even on the payroll then. I just wasn't fully engaged yet, but I will be going back out to Vancouver immediately. I will also have programs and inauguration, et cetera, that will be both held in Chicago and Vancouver. I said Adler in Vancouver, and you will hear me say this. Adler in Chicago, Adler in Vancouver, and Adler online. So I will be using that nomenclature. That is not to be dismissive of any part of our institution. It's actually to connect our institution. We are Adler in multiple places, and we've tried to create this, well, I'll talk more about this idea of an online campus. And campus has a whole number of other things that come with it. And so we will be thinking about how we reimagine some of that. The second piece about Canadian regulations, et cetera, I have been meeting with some of the individuals in Vancouver about Canadian regulations. The reason that I mentioned the closure in the United States of institutions, actually Canada has not experienced the closure of institutions like the United States. It's a different landscape. So that's why I referenced the United States in those places. And the regulatory issues outside of accreditation in Canada have not been as drastic over the last 20 years. And part of that has to do with different ideas of how education is part of the culture and country. And so that also is part of the difference between Vancouver and Chicago, Canada, and the United States. Hope I answered that question. Other questions?
Thank you.
Good. Again, welcome to Adler University.
Thank you.
And looking forward, what are your thoughts about our fundraising capability or structure? And looking at a university, what percentage, a good question is, what percentage of our income should be external versus dependency on tuition?
Thank you for the question. This is also a shift. So there are about, depending on who you ask, there might be 4 or 5 universities that actually have the endowment to be able to support themselves throughout time. Literally. Outside of that, right, most institutions have some form of being tuition driven, which is what you're talking about. Tuition-driven institutions, and I'm going to talk about private institutions versus public, because public institutions can be tuition-driven too, but that's very different. So private institutions and those that are tuition-driven, that is actually where we've seen the most closures, right? So if you double down and actually look and disaggregate the data, that disaggregation actually shows that. And part of that is because they are tuition driven without state funds, right, and support in some of the similar kinds of ways and buttressing that. And also the mergers, because in the state, if you're a state school and you merge, CUNY merges Baruch and whatever, that's fine. But if you are a private institution, you usually be merged with a much larger institution. Okay, so that's sort of what we're seeing across higher education. Tuition-dependent institutions historically have tried to do 2 things: raise tuition and engage alumni. But it doesn't work. I'm just like, doesn't work. And it doesn't work because inflation, right? So inflation, and then also cost of living, you can never raise tuition high enough, right, to match that. It's just the growth of economies. And so as a result, what we have to do is think about multiple, right, streams of bringing revenue into the institution. And so when I think about fundraising for Adler, I think there are 4 areas. One is to really dig down into mental health, right? Mental health, we have a mental health crisis globally. I just got back from South Africa over the summer. There is a crisis globally, and we sit right there in the middle. And we have this person, Adler, who broke rules, who really thought about community and thought about how we can work together. So I think that's the first. And there are lots of different funds and opportunities out there. That includes grants, that includes foundations, all kinds of things. The second area is really thinking about this connection to health equity. And we know that if you look at any of the health foundations, and of course, if you look at even our federal government, they have really leaned into, right, social determinants of health, health equity, and really thinking about that. So that's the second area that I think that we can really reimagine. I kind of alluded to this earlier, and this has to do with partnerships. One of the things that I've done throughout my career is create new partnerships. Those partnerships are then to help institutions so that we are partnering together to build stronger supports. So I'll give you one concrete example. When I was at NYU, we created this environmental justice network, and then we partnered with sustainability organizations. What did that allow us to do? That allowed us to write grants, to get funds from the city and the state, et cetera, that we wouldn't have been able to get if we weren't partnering with these particular kinds of sustainability organizations that were actually focused on environmental justice, not just climate, right? So specialization again. And the last area is then, of course, really highlighting the work of our faculty and students, which I think is actually the most important. I think that alumni engagement is important, and you heard me talk about that, but it's about friend raising. It's not necessarily just about fundraising. You can't go ask your alums who you haven't talked to in forever and say, hey, give us, right? And you have to create what's called a culture of giving. And that's what we'll be working on, is reimagining how do we think about a culture of giving across the institution with our students and our alumni. But that culture of giving is not just about giving money, it's about giving resources, it's about giving time, and it's about, right, working in collaboration. So I hope I answered your question.
That's great. We have another one from online. This one's actually submitted in advance. So we did put out a form so that folks could submit questions in advance. So some folks did, and we'll try and get to as many as we can again today, while also giving y'all the space to ask some questions. So, given the significant changes and stress in our community is facing, particularly with leadership transitions at various levels, could you share more about your individual leadership style? How do you plan to guide and support faculty and staff as we navigate these challenges together?
My leadership style. So I am a collaborator. I played sports as a younger person, and I like teams. So I like teams. I like to work in teams. I like to work with teams, faculty teams, staff teams, student teams. One of the things that I will be doing, I like these town halls, et cetera, but surveys, all of those kinds of things to get feedback. I'm a big data person. I also will be having these, I've tried to figure it out because all these presidents have these things like run with me. I don't run. Unless I'm being chased. And so so it'll be like, go to an art museum or do art with me or something like that. So there'll also be opportunities to socially engage with me. And we're planning some of those out. We'll probably have a couple of semesters, so we'll have some of that. And that will also allow me to be in community with you all. So we'll be doing some of that. So I would say collaboration. I am very team oriented. I am also data-driven, highly data-driven, highly. Multiple forms of data. I created a committee once and had 17 different types of people doing different types of data. So, across different disciplines, because I'm really interested in that. And I think we can approach data in different ways. The other areas, I think, leadership style, I try to be fun. I'm really into fun. Some people say my laugh is too loud, but I know somebody else who they said that about, and so I'm like, okay. So I think those are the things. I mean, other than that, I think I don't know what else you want to know about me. I have a lot of friends. This is another thing though, maybe I'll mention this, because what kind of leader am I? I also believe in professional development and development of individuals. I was a leader who was, as a young leader, I didn't have a lot of like mentors, and then they came later, which was great. But I think that I'm really into how do we develop leaders and how do we create leaders. And I think leadership is not something that comes through osmosis. And so as a leader, I've also been to a lot of leadership classes, like training. And I remember when I first became a leader, I was horrible. I mean, I was horrible. I hope I've gotten a little bit better, but I've also had a lot of experience, a lot of training, a lot of feedback, et cetera. And that, I think the last thing I'll say is I like feedback loops. And one of my jobs, I put a little suggestion box at the front of my office. The problem was the people didn't know what a suggestion box was, so nobody put anything in it. So I had to create one online. I see, there's some people laughing, they're like, we know what you're talking, some people still don't know what I'm talking about. But there used to be this thing called a suggestion box, and you would put it out, yeah. But no students put anything in it, so I was like, I could change with the times.
Lovely, thank you. This question comes from the Vancouver Faculty Council.
Okay.
We are curious about the president's vision for academic shared governance. How will faculty input be valued? And how will safe spaces be created where decisions that affect frontline faculty are consulted and appreciated?
Absolutely. I come from all the institutions where I feel got the best training, had shared governance models, sort of the highest levels. And so are going to reimagine, and that's what I was referencing when I said reimagine even the cabinet and things like that. It's not because I don't think that the contributions from the people on the cabinet are great. I think we just need to some degree expand it and reimagine it. And some of that is about shared governance. I will be after at the next town hall. I will after I gather some more information and work with some people. I'm not going to announce a shared governance model today because I've been here 2 weeks. That's not shared governance. Right. So that's not shared process. So it's for sure. Right. So I will be working with others. We'll get a report back and then we'll start to develop this together and think about faculty input, faculty councils, et cetera. And so that's how we will do this process. I hope that answers the question.
Lovely. I'm gonna give one moment of pause in case anybody in the Chicago room was like, shut the hell up. Great, moment of pause, going. Okay. You mentioned the organizational development assessment. What can staff members expect to experience as this gets underway? How will the results and outcomes be shared with us?
Yes, we are. Well, I am saying we are creating a presidential website. Tech is hard, so we're working it out. But that's what we're going to do. And you will see that I am an overshare in some ways. So just like this presentation will be online, right? And then we will have other presentations in line, the organizational assessment. Once we get back the results, I'll publish it, I'll put it up, I'll talk about prioritization with different constituency groups. We'll work through the priorities and I will list those. I'll just again concretize this. When I first went into my last institution, I did a survey, I collected data from 22,000 people. I took that data, I created 42 committees, 17 statisticians, and we took that data, disaggregated it, we created priorities, we worked through those priorities. As we worked through those priorities, we published them both in the newspaper and online, and then we also reported on our progress through those priorities. Not just myself, but of course the other leaders across the institution, including deans and chairs, et cetera, all of whom were part of the process. So that is how I will, not with 42 committees and 17 statisticians, but we will have a process and an engaged process by which we do this work. And so the organizational development consultant is meeting with people. And like I said, anybody who, if you have something you need to say, we'll have some open sessions, et cetera, so that we can get feedback.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge our time, so I'm going to ask one more closing question, and then I also want to note that there were a lot of questions submitted through the online form, so we'll be reviewing those together, and note that in future town halls, and those are areas of interest, et cetera, et cetera. And this will be available online too, so just, we are recording, so this will all be online and available for everyone to watch, faculty and staff, after this as well. All right, so there is a lovely question that I saved for last, and it says, thanks for your openness, Dr. Coleman. I know as faculty and staff, we're asking a lot of you, but I believe we also have a lot to give. How can faculty and staff be a supportive part of the transitions happening?
Thank you. I think participation, right? There's going to be a lot of activity, right? And I am going to try to get feedback, et cetera, as much as I can. So participate in those venues and the opportunities to meet with me, to do art with me, whatever those things are. Because all of it, right, is information for me to begin to think about how I can work in community with you all. I think in terms of the faculty and staff, what I've already seen is tremendous. I've met with a lot of faculty and a lot of staff already, not enough. But I think that already I've seen an incredible commitment to Adler, right? I have this thing, right? Because remember, I was the person critiquing the institution. That was my job, right? And so I think, and this is in the vein of kind of Baldwin, right? We critique it because we want to make it better, right? And so how do we make it better? And I think we don't want to do all critique. We have to then work together to figure out how we close those gaps. But I also think that I'm going to look at where the areas are that people have said, we're not doing so well. And how can we close some of those gaps as well? We might not be able to close all of them, obviously, but some of them, and to figure out what those next steps are together. So that's where I think faculty and staff can also be helpful to me, because there are things I just don't know, right? And there are things I won't know. There are histories I don't know. Like, I didn't know that Adler was one of the first people to say that a woman could be president. I found that out in Vancouver, right? I like that. So I think that there are things I'm going to learn along the way, lots of things. And I think that's one of the things. I didn't say this when someone said, what kind of learner are you? I mean, what kind of leader are you? I'm a learner, right? I read, I study, I am the consummate graduate student. I kind of never left in my head. So that's where I think I am, with a little more mature now, I hope, but like, yeah, than when I was a graduate student, but yeah. So I think that's really important to me, and I will continue to learn with you all. Let me, is that it? Okay, so let me say again, thank you to you all. Thank you for your commitment to Adler. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being online. Thank you for being in Chicago and Vancouver online and online in that form as well. And I look forward to meeting with you all again. I'll see you in Vancouver soon.